When you see this, what do you see? I'll give you a moment. I know some of you are saying, it's a box. I don't know what she sees, but I see a box. And I see some of you looking at your neighbors and saying, of course that's a box. We don't need a minute. Well, let me tell you, when I see this, I don't see a box. No, I see a beautiful doll house. A house? No, not for me, but I see the expectations of a beautiful home. You see, there's an upper level, you see that, with rooms, and then a lower level with a dining area, and of course, a living room. Well, at least that's what I saw when I was a kid. My best friend Lena and I, we spent hours creating beautiful houses from cardboard boxes. We had it in our minds that we could create condominium complexes for everybody. Black, white, red, gray, purple, polka dot, if you will. Everyone was invited, for a small fee, of course. Then one day, her brother said to us, aren't you all a little bit old to keep playing with cardboard boxes? She and I, we took the time and we thought about it. Not immediately, because we had construction going on at the time. But later on, a couple weeks later, we thought about it. We talked about it. We discussed it. We even had a kiddie meeting about it. And we came to the conclusion that he just might be right. Maybe we're a little bit too old to keep playing with cardboard boxes. But then later on, I found out, and this really got me, that's what architects do all the time. They play with cardboard boxes and plastic toys. They build their little villages to sell for strip malls and high-rise apartment buildings, and sometimes even dream homes. What would we have been if he never told us that we were being a little bit weird? What could we have been if he never introduced us to the opinions of other people? Now, let's get this understood. I or she never wanted to be an architect. That never crossed our mind. Matter of fact, she wanted to be a rapper, and I was going to be an attorney. It was not just a thought or a dream. I knew without the shadow of a doubt that I was going to be an attorney. You see, I had it all planned out. I was going to be an attorney. I was going to live in New York, and I was going to drive a Porsche 911, red, of course, and I would vacation in Paris. It was not just a dream. It was what I expected my whole life. In elementary, middle, and high school. That was my story. I just knew without a shadow of a doubt that's what I was going to do. When other people were learning French and Spanish and Japanese, I was learning a dead language, Latin. I was part of the humanities club. I learned Roman law, and I even learned how to draft appellate cases. But then my life changed forever. I became a teen mom, and no one told me that I had options. Matter of fact, they told me I probably would not amount to anything because I became a mom too early based on other people's opinions. I was so embarrassed. I was so ashamed. I didn't want to tell anybody. I couldn't tell anybody. Matter of fact, I didn't tell anybody that I was pregnant for 8 whole months. I never had any prenatal care. My grades plummeted, and I fell into a deep hole of depression. Why? Because I was afraid. I was scared of what people were going to think about me. See, what he had did, he wasn't trying to be intentional. He wasn't trying to be spiteful. But what her brother did was he planted a small dose of fear in us about other people's opinions, other people's expectations, other people's dreams and goals and what they think is right and what they think is wrong, and even what they thought was kind of weird. So I went back to school later, and a guidance counselor wanted to send me to a special school, with girls in my condition. No one ever told me that there was such thing as family housing on campuses. It was a full-blown nightmare, and if that wasn't enough, I married very young. I married my high school sweetheart because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. But even that was a nightmare. It was unsafe, and it was unhealthy, and it lasted 12 long years. Because I was afraid of people's thoughts, I was afraid of people's judgments, I was afraid of their opinions. I was so afraid that I didn't know that I could leave. I was afraid to go from one bad relationship to another bad relationship. I was afraid of not becoming that lawyer, of never even seeing a Porsche 911 or vacationing in Paris. But by God's grace, he allowed me to birth a beautiful little girl and then 2 more children after. And I must say, she was very healthy, big lungs, a lot of crying. For many years, my life was in shambles because I was afraid. I feared people's opinions and judgments, people's experience and thoughts. I was afraid of nonverbal communication and verbal communication. I was afraid of disagreements, and I was afraid to agree. I was afraid of being a mom so soon and not being a wife. I was afraid of missing out, and I was afraid of what I was becoming. I was afraid that I would never amount to anything, like my guidance counselor once told me. I was so afraid that I wished many times that I could hide in one of those little rooms in my old house, old cardboard house. But that was gone forever. I was so afraid to leave Michigan, but I was afraid to stay. So one day, I decided that I needed to be afraid of what my life would be if I stayed in that situation. So I assessed the situation, and I decided to sneak out of my house, one that I bought, a real house, not this one. I snuck out of my house. I packed up my 3 kids, 2 TVs, and I drove from Michigan to Georgia, afraid. I drove with fear of the unknown, but a faith in God and a prayer that said, God, if you lead me, I'll go. Fear is, by definition, is the induced by perceived danger or threat that occurs in certain organisms. It will change your behavior. Feelings such as fleeing, hiding, or freezing. Let me say that again. Fleeing, hiding, or freezing by your perception. You see, fear has the ability to stop you in your tracks. But what would happen if you thought about never being afraid? What would happen, and what could you have been if no one ever told you that you could not be that? Fear will paralyze us. Believe me, I still have my share of fears. Matter of fact, there was a little frog on my door the other morning, and I was so afraid of not going in that I just almost hid in my car. But then I said to myself, You have to go on the other side of the door. So I closed my eyes and I stuck the key in, and before you know it, the frog hopped on his merry way. Thank God it didn't hop on me. But then I thought about something. That's normally what happens when we get into a place of fear. We will stand on the opposite side of a locked door, paralyzed, not move. How many of us know that the blessing could be on the other side of the door if we just go past our fears? Do you know, in 2018, Small Business Trends reported that 33% of Americans say that they don't start a business because they're feared to fail. And 52% of young Americans don't pursue STEM degrees because of fear of the subjects being too hard. Do we realize that that's 52% less scientists, mathematicians, technology majors, and engineers that are stopped because of fear? Fear can ruin our lives. And remember, it's only a perception. Here's a fun fact for you for today. Do you know that there's 21 million Americans that have a fear of Friday the 13th? So real. There are people that won't go out of the house, that won't look in this beautiful day simply because Friday happened to fall on the 13th of the month. Imagine what they're missing out on today. What I want to share with you on my last few minutes while I'm standing here is that don't be afraid. I charge you in these last few minutes to let's look at fear a little bit different. Fear. F-E-A-R. Fear. Forget everything and relax. Fear. F-E-A-R. Forget everything and relax. Sometimes that's all we need to do. Sometimes we need to visualize ourselves actually doing what we're afraid to do. You see, if I would allow fear to stop me, I would have never been able to marry a wonderful husband. And now we have 5 beautiful children. I would have never been able to pursue anything and stayed sheltered right there, paralyzed by fear. Sometimes we're forced to relax, and that's the only way that we can move on. And sometimes we have to grasp our fears to go forward. And sometimes we just need to relax and do it. Use it as an act as if statement. As if no one is watching. As if no one sees me. As if you all aren't just looking at me now. Fear. Forget it and just do it. Fear. F-E-A-R. False emotions appearing real. Remember what I said? That fear, most of the time, is just in our heads. And sometimes what we have to do is come out of our own heads. See, if I would have listened to that guidance counselor, I would have never pursued my dream. Now, I did become a paralegal. I didn't become an attorney. My husband took me to New York last year, and we went to the Porsche dealership down on 75. He told me Paris is in a couple years, so we're going to see. But I never would have graduated from Point University. And as I was telling the president on yesterday, it was one of the most significant moments in my whole entire life. I not only graduated from Point University with honors, but I also pursued a master's degree. I worked for one of the top medical schools in the country, and right now I'm a PhD student. But see, I had to get past that false emotions of appearing real. it was halting me, put me to a place of freezing. Fear, F.E.A.R. Failure, expected, and received. Failure, expected, and received. Expect to fail. Grasp your failures. People fail all the time. Do you know you only really fail if you never try? Let me tell you something. Oprah Winfrey was fired as a news anchor. Why? Because she wasn't fit for TV. Walt Disney was fired because they said he didn't have enough imagination or any original ideas. Do you know that Michael Jordan was cut from his basketball team in high school? Could you imagine the coach's face now? Grasp your failures. It's not in what we fail, it's in the lesson that we learn when we retrieve what we thought we lost. Fear. F.E.A.R. False evidence appearing real. False evidence appearing real. As I said before, sometimes we have to just remind ourselves of who we are and whose we are. If you don't have it in you, then go to your Bible, look up your word. Paul told Timothy that God did not give you a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. That is the evidence of who we really are. And if that's not enough, speak it into existence. And don't just speak it, walk in it proudly, like no one is watching, like you have no fear of anything. Why? Because most of the time, your fear will be like that frog and just jump on off on the other side. It's false. Most of the time, it's in here. But you'll never know if you never walk forward. And lastly, fear. Feel excited and ready. Feel excited about your future. Don't look back at the past or think about people's opinions or think about what their expectations are. Think about what it is that you want to do, how you really, really feel about something. Grasp the moment. Seize the day. Walk forward in your fear. Go forth in your fear and let your fear work for you. Thank you.